can we replace film photography with a digital alternative that gives us the same vibe? Photography is an expensive profession and also a hobby, but even more so when you do have a love for shooting film and analog cameras. And there have been attempts to make film simulators, and some successfully so, but not always, things that's available to the consumer. I have tried some of the ones that's out there, and I've never really been convinced. And then I heard about Dehancer, and I thought, well, that might just be worth a try after realizing how much money I've spent recently on development and scanning of film. So we're out here in Stellenbosch, and what I have here is my Canon AE-1 and the FD 35-105 lens, which is pretty special. But what we also have is the Fujifilm C200 film, and we're photographing vineyards and a bit of mountain and blue skies. So so let us load up the AE-1 and see what we get. So I have a frame here. The light reading I get here is on a 200 ASA film is basically f16 at a 2/50th of a second, which corresponds to the f16 rule, or the sunny 16 rule as some would know it. So the AE-1's light meter is still quite spot on, I would imagine. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to shoot this exact image with the AE-1 and then use my Canon R, use the same lens and shoot exactly the same shot so we can get a good comparison, and then using Dehancer to see how close we can get to a real filmic look. Here we go. So let's load up our first frame. Well, that's the frame. There we go. Don't you just love that sound? That's amazing. All right, so now let's take exactly the same image, exactly the same exposure, using the Canon R fitted with an FD EOS R adapter for the lens. Focusing at infinity, and a self-portrait. How cool would that be? To be able to do a self-portrait in the winelands with these two cameras in bright sunlight. So how I'm going to do that is I'm going to need to find a spot to focus on that I can stand in line with. It's a 5.6. We're going to go 1,000th of a second. 5.6. I'm focusing on one of these trellis poles, and that's where I'm going to stand. Let's put the self timer on. Let's hope that was in focus. Now let's do it with the Canon R. There we go. And so, and smiley, smiley. So, let's see how that worked out. I'm on a commercial job, and I thought, why not do another comparison shot here, so to see how a Dehancer film would deal with situations like this. This is a very contrasty shot. So that's that. That is a roll. So there we go. There we have our control Fuji C200. I'll check you back in the studio. Okay, so basically the settings that Dehancer in their very useful little manual suggests we use is as follows. It says we need to make sure that we are in the Adobe standard color profile. Now this is Adobe standard version 2 that I have installed here. Exposure we need to set to -1. So you just need to make sure that your gamma settings are at 2.2. Contrast we are at -40. And then blacks we need to push up to +60. There we go, we're pushing it up to +60. We need to make sure that the curve is straight linear. We go to the detail, make sure that sharpening is 0 and noise reduction is also 0. We just want to make sure that it's not over sharpened or anything like that. We want to work with as close possible file, you know, because there's sharpening that happens in camera and all these type of things that we want to avoid, so that we have a good match for film to start off with. And then we will be saving it. I'm going to do it at the same size that my scans are, which are 3000 pixels and 16-bit. Very important. Dehancer at this stage is built for the sRGB color space. Press Alt S here in Adobe Raw. Just make sure that we sync all the settings to all the files. There we go. Now all have the same setting. Let's go ahead and save. Again, make sure they suggest you save it in the TIFF format. Again, sRGB 16-bit, and we do it to a 3000 pixel long axis length. So basically what this gives us a very flat profile image, which is best to apply the Dehancer filters to. So here we have our two images. On the right, we have the image taken with a Canon AE-1 and the Fuji C200, and on the left we have the Canon R with the same lens. So you can see just straight off the bat, there's obviously a massive difference. Naturally the digital image has been flattened, robbed of profile more or less, so that we can work with it. So what we do now is we go to filter, and right at the bottom, after installing it, you'll see that you have Dehancer film. There we go. Right, so here on the left you'll see you've got presets that you can use. So add for color, all sorts of different presets that they have pre-prepared for you for some effects by the Dehancer team. So there's your own preset, imported preset, so like a normal preset setting. I'm going to be going to profiles. You have all your film profiles, and there are a lot. I think on the light version you've got something like 63. Here's your Kodak Portra 800, Portra 400s, 160 VC, ooh, that's my jam, Fuji C200. I'm not going to make a lot of adjustments. The reason being is when I am right now, I've got reference images to work to, so I can go and try and match what I took with my camera to what the film has produced. One I need to bear in mind that the scan also has an influence on how the film will appear color-wise and all that. But generally, the idea would be that you use Dehancer on digital images, and you won't have C2-100 analog control image to work against the whole time. So I'm not going to go and do a huge amount of work on these images in the Dehancer interface, even though you can. If you go to the right here, you'll see you have your source. This is where you can do exposure compensations, and these are things that you would, if you were a color printer, and you remember we're simulating, if you use Fuji C200, we're simulating a color print that I would be making in a darkroom. So the source image, you can do a bit of color compensation, exposure compensation, or how hard you print or how light you print, a bit of tint compensation. You even have defringing and things like that. The source image, that's your digital image that you're going to be working from. Then you have your film developer settings. Here you can contrast, gamma correction, color separation,
On a negative, in the film processing side, when you develop the film, that'll have an influence as well. And basically what they've done very cleverly here is that you simulate many of the things that you would do in the analog setting. You can simulate here. You've got film compression, well, this is tonal range, white point, black point, color density, those type of things, which generally would be more at play in print. Expand, like I said, I'm not going to bother with that too much. I'm just going to disable it. Then print. Now this is very important, and it's something that I never thought about when using film plugins, whatever. But it has to simulate, if you're using color negative film, it has to simulate the paper print. And as somebody who has done color analog printing in his career, that has a huge amount of variability in it as well. Each paper has a base color, a base tint, and so you have these profiles available. And what I have here is you've got your Fuji film 351 print film, Godox 2383 print film. These are things that they would use in cinema as well. I want to simulate, especially with the Fuji Color C200, which was a very budget film, I want to have the 1 hour photo lab vibe, and that would most probably be your Kodak glossy paper that you would use in those days. And these are all things that you could set when printing. Here, your color head, that's in your color enlarger. It's a CMYK head most of the time, or definitely with negs or negatives. You would use the subtractive process CMYK, and so you've got this enlarger head with a CMYK settings. And so this is actually very cool. If you have done color printing in your life, you would find this actually quite intuitive. But it gives you the options of shadow tones and midtones and highlight tones, and preserving exposures. Obviously, as you change your color mix, if you want to call it that, your exposure changes slightly. Now, when you're using a Durst or any color enlarger like that, some of them has an electronic timer that would compensate for that. In the days that I used, you had to manually compensate for any color correction you made. You needed to compensate or test for exposure, which I think is very clever. Then you've got your film grain, and this is what everybody's after. I'm just going to leave all these settings as is, because naturally these Fuji Color C200 profiles have, I would imagine, they've researched it, and what they have here should be as close to the real thing as one can get. Then halation. So if you're into the Cinefilm, ramjet removed films, here is your halation settings. This is not an image that would show a huge amount of halation anyways, but you know, where you have your red blooms behind highlights, especially in dark images. That would happen because of light reflecting from the film back through the film, exposing it basically a second time from the back, creating those halos or halation. And here you can simulate and also control the halation effect, which I think it's cool. Bloom, your highlight blooms. Again, I'm not going to mess around with it too much. This image does not have a lot of that. And then finally your vignette, which is really a product of your camera and lens, but also it can be of an enlarger lens. So if you're printing, your enlarger would sometimes, especially the old enlarger lenses, some of them, the coverage that they had was a little bit center weighted, and they would vignette towards the sides, which is an effect in itself. Right, and so here we have the two images, and I know some would say, oh, they look completely different. In fact, apart from the color, I'm actually quite pleased with the texture, rendering, and also the tactile grain feel that I get from them. There's definitely similarity for me there. The scan, first the shot on the right, is very definitely compensated somewhat for red. And so there's definitely a lot more cyan in that scan than there should be. Also maybe a little bit of a push of green, but you can see all the shadows, everything has got like a cyan tint to it. Knowing South Africa, and I know the light that we have here, it is very much warmer than that. Now for the dehanced image on the left, that is definitely leaning towards magenta and red too much. But bear in mind, I did not do any changes on the color head controls. So going forward, I would obviously know, well, look, that is something that I need to compensate for somewhat with Fuji C200. But if I just look at the effect that I get from there, the grain from a straight conversion, I did not do any edits, I'm actually quite impressed. I actually really do like the vibe that I get from that image. Righto, let's scroll through the images. Here's the self-portrait. Images on the left is the Dehancer enhanced digital image, and the right is the scan. Same as the previous one, it's the same lighting situation. Definitely Dehancer renders it too red and magenta, and maybe not as contrasty. Looking past the color, I would say that just in terms of the filmic feel, I do like it. I really like it. The grain might be a little bit heavy, but that can be adjusted as well. Right out of the box, I prefer the Dehancer image here. I think the scan of the Fuji is not great either. Again, leans towards a little bit too cold. The Dehancer might be a little bit too warm, but knowing that sort of late afternoon light in my location here, it is very red. But maybe it's not the best scan in the world either. Here we have another fairly low light situation, and again I enjoy the Dehancer image more because it's more red, rendered red. In terms of texture, they're quite similar to me. I would definitely, going forward for the Fuji, at least C200 setting, maybe just bring down the grain somewhat, but other than that, again, I'm very pleased with that look. Going to keep repeating this. The point of this is not to try and match one image to the other like I'm doing now. It's about creating a vibe. In terms of vibe, it definitely does create it. Only criticism might be that stock standard out of the box maybe just renders Fuji C200. This particular image, definitely more neutral on both sides. I really do like the way that it renders this image. Yes, very much my vibe. It's nice and warm. I think it's truer to what happened there, but also it's got a better vibe. I just really like it. And as you can see, I accidentally zoomed in a little bit when I shot the Canon AE-1 with a film in it, so you've got a slightly more cropped image. And now for the image that we shot in the wine cellar, and again, straight off the bat, I prefer the Dehancer render. It's a very contrasty image, so it is quite a task for film to hold on to that. Also, digital sensors react a little bit different to a mixture of flash and tungsten ambient light. The way they render it's a little bit different. Interesting how these latter shots are a lot more similar in color, which suggests to me that the scans have some form of auto color correct built in.
So my final take, I like this product. I don't think it's an easy thing to achieve. I think this is a lot harder than one think, and considering that Dehancer can be used for video applications as well, they've got a Premiere Pro and a Davinci Resolve application. This could be a very, very cool option when you're low on budget for many of our analog guys, and also maybe if you're looking for a specific look and feel that matches that of film for any other project that you might have, and then film might just not be a practical option, or you just like your mirrorless or digital camera and you also like a filmic look. This is definitely an option. I would like to try it against some more film stocks, but for what I saw against the Fuji 200, I'm pleased. I think this is a great product, a great alternative to spending huge amounts of money on processing and scanning. If you want to try out Dehancer, please check the link below, download the trial version, have a look at it, and if you decide to buy it, put in the code DANINELPHOTO for a 10% discount on this great product. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Cheers.